I was talking a little bit earlier about this idea of us living in an inanimate world. You know, there's this idea in the last 150 years that everything is inanimate and there's just a few things that have, that are animated, or that there is a soul, that there is a spirit. And so not only the challenges that are facing us, not only are we having to raise money or reassess, all of us in every organization, our connection with nature, but there's a reason that there's an oak tree on every plant. And Kerry Nedartic says it's called a flinton. Is that a baby oak tree? A flinton? Flittern. A flittern. There is a reason, because somehow, you know, for the eternity of our people since the Paleolithic age, 99% of people have believed that these things are animated, that they have spirit, they have a soul. So does stone, so does water. And our people did too. And we've lost that in such a small amount of time. We've decided that the world is inanimate. And so not only, as I say, are we going back to respect the land, but we are trying to have a whole different dimension, relationship with the world. And the challenge of this was brought to me when we brought a delegation of Native American Cree elders to the Dáil in November last year. And the different Tufta Dáil and the ministers were both the Shannon and the Dáil were so welcoming, but they didn't make that gulf. They couldn't understand what the native people were saying, that the world was alive, that the world had vibrancy, that we are as much part of the rock, of the water, of the tree, as we are of ourselves. And so if anyone was going to understand that concept, I would say it would be Magan Noonan. And so it's a great honour for me to have a chance to talk to you. You had a vision for an Ireland. You still have a vision for an Ireland. Would you talk about that?
For me, it's a vision of a community, interconnected communities, and communities interconnected with nature. I do see a picture of or at times when I close my eyes, I see a picture of our landscape teeming with wildlife and teeming with bird song, and with flourishing forests and with really healthy streams and free-flowing rivers and our oceans, and communities being part of that, urban and rural, and that interconnectedness that is so unique about Ireland and about being part of this country, that we could achieve that. It's tricky because sometimes you're afraid to bring your spirit into politics. I mean, at times, you know, we had a debate on the nature restoration all this week. We had a debate. We've had a lot of debates in the Dáil in the last few weeks about biodiversity, about nature. And sometimes you do get emotionally caught up in it, you know. So sometimes you have to maintain your hardline political face and look like a politician and be all political, but sometimes you just have to burst out and let it all go, you know.
I mean, they're very different aspects. In a way, again, if all of us were to open our minds, open our hearts and imagine a political system that we might have in the future, we'd imagine a politician like you. We'd imagine a politician who was daring to vision, who realised that that we were part of a greater ecosystem. And so that background of yours, you were director of Friends of the Earth. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so like my background was an activist background, and you know, just from a very young age I was involved in C&D and wildlife organisations from the age of 15, 16, and you know, that transcended into local activism with Earthwatch and then Friends of the Earth, and then I became a director of Friends of the Earth, and we were able to manage that. I feel very proud of what FOE Ireland has achieved since that time, and it just felt really, for me, very important to be part of something that was, albeit on the margins of Irish life, was actually doing something very significant and pushing, constantly pushing the boundaries and pushing those challenges around our whole economic model and economic growth in particular. And it wasn't, generally when we see a lot of green politicians, many of us come from activist backgrounds, and you know, just you're approached by a political party to run, and it was, and went in to run in a local election in 2004 in Kilkenny and topped the poll, and which was great crap altogether, and and you're thrown into a whole other world. Like you all of a sudden you're sitting in the council chamber and you think you can still talk like you did when you're on a protest, and you can't. And so it's a very unusual route into politics, but it really is a fantastic grounding. And for me, going back to that original thinking and vision, it's that idea of being able to work with others, to collaborate with others, to work with people who you would normally see as adversarial to you. And in the last number of years, I've had to sit down with lots of different organisations who have been completely at odds with my view on things. And farm organisations, hunting groups, environmental groups who think we weren't doing things right. And the trick for me is to sit down and listen, and to be able to empathise with others. So from that background of activism, it's that ability to be able to listen and to empathise with others, I think is hugely important.
Yeah. That's something that's relevant to all of us in this room, because this room probably is full of idealists and a fair small bunch of pragmatists, but all of the idealists are realizing in this time of urgency that we're going to have to become more pragmatic. And in your whole life of activism, you've been surrounded by idealists, and a lot of them, and probably you at a certain time, weren't able to sit at the room with the players. Talk to me about that transition and how important and what do you lose in the process?
Yeah, we've always felt, and even as an environmental activist, we've always felt we've been very much on the margins and very much outside. I've been outside gates in Leinster House as much as I've been inside them. And from that point of view, you feel an awful sense of frustration when you're on a campaign, and that campaign, you lose that campaign. I was campaigning against big box retail on the edge of towns, and it's hugely unpopular to be doing stuff like that, because we want our TESCO or whatever it is. And it's when I think moving into politics brought about an opportunity to be able to, yes, absolutely maintain your principles and your views and your thoughts and your vision, but also being able to listen. And I think I just say that again and again, because it's the ability to be able to listen to the views of others and actually see it from their point of view.
Tell me that practically. It's a concept. We understand we should listen, but your initiative. If I'm sat down with someone who's absolutely against everything, I will close down. I will feel anger. Is it you're actively trying to open your ears again and put down your feelings, or?
Yeah, and at times I think you have to do that. You have to just put aside everything and just go in with a very open heart and open mind. And I think much of what we haven't achieved a whole lot so far, Hannah and I and our team, but what we've managed to do over the last couple of years in particular is really create a space where people can have their voice heard, and be it the Children and Young People's Assembly, be it meetings with the top brass of the IFA or the Nature farmers or the NARGC or all the various other lobby groups that are out there that have an interest in a stakeholder in nature. I think the one thing they will say to us that we don't agree with you, but we respect the fact that you've listened to us. And so from that perspective, I think we want to continue in that vein in doing it.
So are you saying so it's a slow process because you're bringing in almost a mindset that's so different from what is this exploitative mindset, which we all inherited. I still have that exploitative mindset growing up in Donnybrook. You're coming up with a whole new different way of looking at the world. That's what you're having to talk to. So you're speaking different languages almost.
Yeah, you have to, and it's trying to. It's been such an incredible learning curve over the last 3 years trying to understand this portfolio. Mm-hmm. It's just quite astonishing, the depth of work that's involved, the depth of work that Cameron's here from National Parks, and the amazing work that they've done. And I think the patience they've had with us as a state while we've underfunded them and almost brought it to the floor. And I think they're just incredible people. who are out there working with organisations, with farmers, with landowners, and I think, I feel very much a sense of duty towards them in particular, because I think that they needed a lot of support, and we've managed to certainly bring things along a distance, but we're also conscious that there's an incredible challenge ahead, that all we've done to date is bring resources up to a point where we can actually catch up with the past. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is what's ahead of us. It's really quite daunting, as I said before.
Because again, some of our richest biodiverse areas are under natural parks and wildlife, so they are protected in that way. But as you said, natural parks and wildlife were so under-resourced that they weren't able. The people there were so diligent and wanted to do it, they weren't able. So as you're saying, you've got them the funding. As you said earlier in your talk, the challenge is now finding the staff. Is it?
It's finding not just the Adam, but just the people, like people in this room. We're going to need lots of professional people, professional skills, ecologists right across the country. But we also need armies of volunteers and armies of people to actually do the restoration, to tackle invasive species, to do the education piece, to do the awareness. All of that has to take place. And if we, for instance, if the nature restoration law is passed and we embark on a nature restoration plan, that is going to involve every single person in this room and every single person in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt earlier was saying, like, again, Home Tree just wants to work with other organisations. There's nothing exceptional about Home Tree. It doesn't want to be unique in any way. But from Home Tree's perspective, as you were saying, they need money to buy land, to forest the land. And there's plenty of money, but then there's dirty money and clean money. There's all these... Do you have any perspective on any advice? There's unlimited money actually out there, but a lot of it, in the same way the work you're doing, you probably have different...
Yeah, we do. I didn't bring a checkbook, by the way, so...
But what's your perspective on that?
It's very tricky. We do work with corporates. I think there's absolutely a role, particularly Ray and I were speaking out at Home Tree, and a lot of corporates don't just want to donate money; they want their staff to get out and take off their white Nikes and get out into the field and get mucky and plant trees and manage invasives and stuff. So it's trying to capture that, but we saw with the nature restoration law the likes of Nestle, Coca-Cola coming out supporting it. Well, that's interesting. These are the big evil corporations, so we do have to have some ethical guidelines around. And I'm sure Home Tree does as well. If you get approached by Coca-Cola or Nestle and offer you £2 million, what do you do? It's a big question. And are they doing it for greenwashing, or are they doing it because they genuinely want to change? And it's a challenge for all of us collectively, because money is a critical part of this, and funding all of this work is hugely important. So, but that's a challenge. It would be a great place to be in, to be able to be approached. But the thing is, are you being paid off, and are they doing it to maybe cover their sins for other actions or inactions?
So, my background, my great-granduncle was the O'Reilly, but so many people, so much politics in Ireland, they trace themselves back either to Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil. The vision was to set up a nation. It was about nationalism, which is kind of a limited enough concept. So, and that's really still a lot of, there's elements of that still in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, in Sinn Féin particularly. It's this whole idea of the Green coming not about nation, not about building this idea of a nation identity, but almost nature, which is beyond borders. Mm. That's even a radical concept for a lot of people in Ireland. Mm. And so I'm interested in that as a start for you. So most people went into politics to build up Ireland as a nation, Ireland Inc. You particularly, that's not your vision. I wasn't sharing.
Yeah, no, I'm very much an accidental politician. We did the activism stuff. We were out Friends of the Earth, and when I was approached to run by the Green Party, I said, I should cut a shot and see what I can do with it. And, I would very readily go back into activism when I get booted out of politics. And so, and that could be sooner than I think. And that's what in your blood, that's what you are. I don't see it as any different. I see that for all of the people that I have, my friends in the party. But you have to be a politician as well, and you have to be hard-nosed, and you have to play the political game. and you sometimes have to do uncomfortable stuff and stand at the door and vote for uncomfortable things because you're in government. But that's because you're working towards a bigger picture. If I weren't achieving the stuff that we have achieved over the past 3 years, I would be very much disillusioned by it now. And I do feel that whatever about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, that they've been very, very supportive of what we've been trying to do. And, we couldn't have achieved any of it without their support. And, I'm not trying to top them up or anything in any way, shape or form. We all have our backgrounds and issues, but it does take the three parties to do that. And I think, we need to be aware of political realities of stuff you can achieve in government and stuff you can't. And that's, for me, that you have to accept some stuff that really, I'd love to be able to, and do certain stuff like the open season order, the hair course and all sorts of stuff. But you realise you're in a three-party coalition. You're a very small part of a three-party coalition.
Yeah. Do you have a vision of what politics will be like in the future? Like, it seems everything in our world is going to have to change, from our economy to our society, our landscape. What?
Yeah, so interestingly, the other part of my portfolio is electoral reform. So I think it was just added in there, just give him the electoral reform. What we do with electoral reform, throw it into that. And it's actually fundamentally a really green part of the portfolio. So we've set up an electoral commission. We're looking at, we're modernising the register with pre-registration 16 and 17-year-olds. And I'm tasking the commission to look at the Scottish experience, among others, of reducing the voting age to 16. And it could be radically transformative, or it could be a disaster. Yeah. I was at Longitude with my son last weekend, and I was looking around the field, and among shouts of "Hey, Grandad, what are you doing here?" and down to see Travis Scott and Metro Boomin, and I said, well, would any of these people actually vote if we reduce the voting age? They might and they might not. But what reducing the voting age would do, in my view, is it would transform our politics. It would transform how we campaign. It would transform the candidates we put forward. It would transform our manifestos. It would transform a lot of the electioneering that goes on, the tokenistic attitude towards young people. You are the future, blah, blah, blah. And then not giving a shit about climate or nature. The politicians speaking out both sides of their mouth about it, telling young people that the future, and then voting and doing things that are actually undermining their futures. So I do think that in a political future, I think we have a very good democracy here, a very robust democracy. It's far from perfect, but it's very stable, and it elects people like me. And, I think I got the lowest first preference vote in the country, and I still got elected. So it throws up anomalies like me, and, I'm like Flanagan and people like that, every now and again people, it does create a system whereby people who maybe come from the edge or come from different backgrounds, and it is, while it's not absolutely representative of the people who live here, because it's still a lot of old balding white men like myself, it still if the commission does as I would like it to do, I would like it to educate, promote awareness, to target minorities, to have travellers running in our elections, to have our council chambers populated with people from minority background, from traveller backgrounds, and young people. And I think that would be absolutely transformative of our electoral system, and it's currently not. And so we have a cohort of people voting who might be the age of most of us here, and I do think if we looked at reducing the voting age, and it's a decision for the Oireachtas. It's not my decision if the Commission comes back with some recommendations, but I do think that we need to look at radically transforming and getting from the typical turnout, particularly at local elections, of 40-45%, up towards 60-65%, and that would really transform our politics, and it would ensure that candidates would run on platforms of climate, would run on platforms of good public transport, of safe routes to school, of ensuring that we have nature-rich cities and towns, and not vote for the status quo. But while I say it is a good democracy, we're still a distance away from that. And I feel very strongly that we need to really, really radically ramp things up. It's very hard to get people to run. It's very hard. I don't blame people, because in the age of disinformation and abuse of politicians, who could blame them, So I think it needs, I think our political system needs to be recognised as a noble profession, as a vocation, and it's not. And, there's so many people talk disparagingly of politicians, but I have the greatest respect to politicians of all hues for the fact that they put themselves forward and they work tirelessly for their communities. So, but I do think we need a whole, whatever, but there's going to be a big transformation in the next Dáil election. There's going to be possibly an extra, maybe 16, 18 seats, big reconfiguration of constituencies, but it's the local elections that are really important to me, because that's where the change happens. So we need lots of people running, people here, people running. You need to be able to transform council chambers, and we need to radically reform local government. Really radically transform it into something that's fit for purpose, because it's currently not. And there's some brilliant work going on in local authorities across the country. But sorry we're done for a bit long-winded about that, but I feel really strongly that there's a potential there to do something very transformative with our political system. But please, I really feel, and I say this everywhere I go, to respect our political system and respect our politicians. They work hard, and all of them, they all work hard, and it is a good system.
There's something else that most of us in this room share, and almost a psychological need or connection to nature, a wish, because there's no logical reason why we'd be gathering together. I'm thinking last year at the Ardnacool at the Home Tree summer school, it was pouring down rain. People it's feeding some element in us. And so I want to talk, like, you were reared in the barracks in Kilkenny, is that right? 10 children. And about that psychological element, why did you go to nature? And if it ties in then to your work with suicide prevention, you were the first, when you were mayor, you were like on the Kilkenny County Council and Borough Council, the first mayor to really focus on suicide prevention and set it up as a county that became a widespread plan. Are they, if they're connected, do talk about them, or otherwise not?
Yeah, they're connected. I think nature is connected to our mental well-being as well. It's absolutely connected, and sometimes that disconnection is, challenging a lot of people, young people in particular. So yeah, growing up in a place like Kilkenny, we were literally on the edge of the city. The River Nore was our playground, and perhaps a lot of young people don't experience that now, going down fishing for eel and cut them up and frying them on a pan and all that stuff like that. It was just a fantastic, magical childhood, and I think that was the beginning of my connections with nature. And probably a strange child, I can't remember, but I was actually. But it was just amazing, just growing up in a town and having a bunch of friends that just wanted to, and your parents didn't know where you were. You'd gone either off hunting rabbits or fishing on the Nore, and you're gone from early in the morning till it was dark at night, and it was just lovely.
And then tell me, why the focus on suicide particularly?
I worked in that area. I was in project work when we developed the suicide prevention plan. It was something, mental health is something I've been very interested in. Obviously, everyone has family members who have mental health challenges, and what we, again, bringing that ecological perspective to it, trying to work collectively and collaboratively with all the organisations and HSE, and to bring about a plan that was inclusive. And we use a lot of participative practices to go around the county and speak to people on what is a very challenging area, because people's personal and family experiences to communicate them is really difficult. And I'm proud that we did develop a very good plan that has since gone on to inform plans across the country. But I do think that we particularly have a real challenge around mental health with young people, and the disconnect that they're feeling at times, the disenfranchising, and their just engagement with screens, and a disconnect from nature at times that is that, again, the likes of Home Tree can be part of bringing young people and getting them involved in tree planting and other activities.
And the home tree definitely see them coming, see the need. Like, it's not something we're reaching out for, but they're coming. I have two final questions for you, Mr. Noonan. The first is, you're interesting, but your wife sounds far more interesting than Jenny. An outdoor preschool educator and a community worker with minority groups.
Yeah, so Jenny works in an outdoor preschool in Kilkenny. Previously that she worked in an outdoor preschool, in a preschool with traveller children, and she loves her work, she loves the practices. It's all, the practice they use is all about co-design with the children, so they set up in the morning and they inclusively work together as to what the plan is for the day and what they're going to do. And so they're out in all weathers, and they have a polytunnel that they hide in from the rain sometimes, but her work is very much, she wouldn't see it as that, but it's very much grounded in an ecological perspective as well. And I love chatting to her when she comes over about her work and our work and how it's all connected. And I do, we were chatting with Ray and Grace outside in the polytunnel, and it needs to begin at preschool there at very, very early age, so that we can nurture not just crops of trees, but crops of young people who want to become ecologists and who want to become scientists and marine biologists. So yeah, I we had a meeting with Minister Harris there a few weeks ago, Hannah and I, to present some of the challenges we have around trying to get enough people to work in the professional side of it, but also the hands-on practical work that needs to be done. And I do think one of the recommendations of the National Parks and Wildlife Service review was to look at the whole of government response to the climate issue and the biodiversity issue, I should say. And in that, the Department of Education has a critical role to play. I think we need to embed nature into...
any signs that the Department of Education are interested in either outdoor education or nature-based education?
I think so, yeah. I think so. It's difficult. Sometimes, we used to work with teachers in the past, and you bring them on summer education courses, developing school gardens with them, and to quite a few of them in Kilkenny for planting orchards with the fruit tree project we have there. And there's fear there. There's some, unless the school has a teacher who's a champion for it, maybe the school won't embark on it. And, so it's trying to, again, work with the whole school community to break down those fears that they have around doing that kind of stuff. And, I'll go back to some of the schools that we did 10, 15 years ago, and they're still flourishing, and you can see, tangibly see the impact on the children. And it's, it's about getting to a point before they head into secondary school that they're nature smart, as Richard New called, and that they have an awareness of X amount of bird species, X amount of plants. They know their trees. All of that's hugely important.
Yeah. If I had time, I'd love to ask you about the fruit tree planting, but I'm aware we're hungry and you need to get to Milltown Melby. So I want to ask you the final question, just about music and art, and particularly tell us who you have played music with. Just tell us a bit about that element of you.
Okay. Yeah, so I played music. I wouldn't bring an instrument to Milltown Melby because there's a couple of musicians there. And so I played mostly in kind of folk music, country music, punk music. We released an album there a few weeks ago, actually, after 30 years of recording it. But
who were you called? What's the name?
We were called the Jerusalem Taxis. Don't ask where the name came from. It was a local slang expression. And yeah, so I've had, won't call it a career, but it's been a brilliant diversion from day-to-day politics, and I still play a bit of music with a friend of mine. And it's just a lovely switch off to close your eyes and sing.
And you have played with?
Really?
You say? You have John Cooper Clarke, Kingy Friedman, and Tommy Ramone.
Tommy Ramone, yeah.
I did, yeah. Minister Malcolm Noonan, thank you so much for coming down.